Okay, as of August 7th, 2020, movie theater operators can be owned by studios, by movie studios, or streaming companies like Amazon and Netflix. This is an interesting article. I have several other articles. The history of this is actually very interesting. It's also related to content distribution, comic book distribution, direct-to-consumer distribution, a lot of interesting stuff. Before we get into the article, if you want to support my work, be sure to subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Also, check out collegeofthedead.com. Pick up a copy of College of the Dead Graduation Day, where college costs you an arm and a leg. It's my ongoing zombie apocalypse graphic novel series. Also, at epicmermaids.com, you can sign up to be notified when The Mermaids is going to be released. Okay, back to the article. So a new court ruling promises to reshape the movie exhibition business. This is coming from The Motley Fool. It's bolstered the stocks of top cinema operators like AMC and Cinemark. And these guys have been in trouble. Their stock has been in trouble. Now, movie theaters are all closed due to the big health event. Just to get an idea of what's going on with movie theaters, AMC Entertainment Holdings. This is the biggest theater chain company. It's actually owned by a Chinese company now, Wanda Group. But there's also some of the stock that's available on the public market. They have been struggling. So the whole value of the company, if you were to go and buy all of the stock in the open market right now, is $519.27 million. That's the market cap. So going back even over 5 years, it used to be as high as $29, but it's $529 million. To go and see, like, well, how have they been doing recently? You can look at their most recent financial results from June 2020, the quarter ended June 2020. They lost $561.2 million. So it's not doing good. In fact, they lost, I think it's like 99% of their revenue. It's ridiculous because all the theaters are closed. However, in the first quarter, they actually reported a loss of $20.88 per share. So that's it. The loss was like over $2 billion. What's going on with AMC? Well, that's another whole story. But movie theaters are not in a position to be dictating any terms to studios anymore. And the history of movie theaters being owned by and controlled by studios is a very interesting distribution thing. And we're going to get into the history of it a little bit. Just to go through the current reporting on this, in her ruling, Judge Annalisa Torres pointed out that the first-run film exhibition is no longer restricted to cinemas. It's no longer exclusively in movie theaters. None of the internet streaming companies, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and others that produce and distribute movies are subject to the old decrees about not allowing movie theaters. Well, there's two main decrees. One, not allowing studios to own movie theaters directly. And two, no block booking. And block booking is forcing product on retailers, kind of like non-returnable comic books. So it's kind of interesting. Quote, thus, the remaining defendants are subject to legal constraints that do not apply to their competitors. So the theory being like, look, you can't hold major studios responsible for their business practices if some are responsible and held to it and others are not, which actually is fair. This opens movie theater operators to various types of collaboration with and, of course, potential ownership by today's major studios now that they'll no longer be constrained by the restriction in the decrees. As the top film exhibitor in North America, AMC Holdings theoretically stands to gain the most. Consequently, AMC stock closed nearly 15% higher on Friday, which is obviously all speculation. Smaller operators also rose at more modest rates. Okay, so this is what was going on. The studio system for producing movies led to basically the major studios controlling all of the distribution. There was no opportunity for direct-to-consumer before technology allowed it. So what the studios did was they locked up all of the great talent. They controlled the talent with really restrictive contracts, and they also controlled the distribution of movies to movie theaters that they owned. For movie theaters that they didn't own, they had very restrictive terms on what they would allow movie theaters to rent from them for showing their movies, and they had a lot of control over those independent theaters, and they forced, through this block booking, movie theaters to take multiple titles at once. So they'd have like one really great movie and like 5 or 6 other movies that were not so great, that were just kind of like low budget junky movies that they were forced to buy, and they were forced to buy them in an entire block. So going into the history of this, in 1942, when the Society of Independent Motion Picture Producers, yes, they call themselves SIMP, began its attack on the Hollywood studio system, the group of filmmakers singled out one old-time studio practice to focus its opposition. That controversial practice was known as block booking. Block booking meant that a studio would sell its films in packages on all or nothing basis, usually requiring theaters to buy several mediocre pictures for every desirable one. Because the studios made mass-produced films, they also sold them in bulk. Block booking was unacceptable to independent producers for a number of reasons. Block booking made it difficult for the independents to get their own movies into theaters when exhibitors had already purchased a block of films that would provide the theater with plenty of movies. So if you think of the example for comic book stores, for example, you've got a company like, Marvel putting out more and more and more and more and more titles all the time, filling up the shelves, tying up the retailers' money, and even worse, giving them product that is not saleable a lot, and sticking them with product, and that clogs up the comic book store shelves. Similarly, that's what was happening to independent theaters. But even worse, since the independent films, even worse, since the independent released their films through the studio-owned exchanges, the independents found that if their films were being used by Hollywood distributors to pawn off low-budget pictures, so an independent producer of a film that was distributed through the studio-owned system and distribution exchanges, their high-quality independent products were being stuck with lower-quality studio B projects, weak projects. The producers believed the block booking encouraged slacked filmmaking by forcing inferior films on the theaters and the moviegoers. In an open letter from 1942, the SIMP producers called the practice the root of all evil in the motion picture industry. The SIMP members brought this obscure practice to the fore until the courts finally abolished block booking, which has remained illegal to this day. Except now it's legal. Now it's legal for movie theater, for studios to tell movie theaters, look, we're going to limit what you can buy. You're going to have to buy this if you're going to buy that. You have to guarantee us you're going to show this. So they're going to go back and forth and fight with them all over again. The origins of block booking. Adolf Zucker, the studio pioneer who transformed Paramount into Hollywood's first vertically integrated movie company, has also been credited with the origination of block booking, the signature practice of the studio era. He realized that by selling his films in packages, a movie theater that wanted one of his A pictures could be forced to buy several inferior B pictures. This created a guaranteed market for even the most mediocre studio films, as theaters were compelled to buy the films sight unseen. The practice evolved over many years and became the rallying point for SIMP producers who denounced block booking as discriminatory, oppressive distribution method that was used to eliminate competition. Allegedly, Zucker originated block booking in reaction to the enormous popularity of the films featuring his contract star, Mary Pickford. Zucker may have also been inspired by industry reports in 1915 that SNA was having such an unprecedented success with Charlie Chaplin comedies that his 2 reel shorts were frequently carrying the sale of the accompanying SNA feature. Zucker decided to sell each Pickford movie in a package of famous players' Lasky films so that her famous golden curls would soon be used to foist unwelcome block booking baggage on theaters. So you take one hot project and you force the retailer to carry all of the other products. And what you can do with these movie theaters, so Paramount owned its own movie theater chain and its own national chain. So they basically tell the independent producers, look, either you're going to represent the Paramount product and carry all of it and promote all of it, or you're not going to get any Paramount movies. Soon, all Paramount films were sold in blocks, and block booking rapidly spread throughout the other Hollywood studios. The independent-minded Pickford threatened to leave famous players Lasky until an anti-block booking provision was written into her contract. She remained one of the most outspoken critics of block booking and later became a founder of the simp movement. She spent decades trying to eliminate the oppressive practice that was spawned by her immense popularity. Isn't that interesting? Block booking in the studio era. So the controversy surrounding block booking began long before the simp protested. In early 1940s, many industry groups decried the arbitrary manner that the studio distributors forced the sale of unwanted pictures. Over the time, practice became more sophisticated as each studio had their own manner of block booking. Oh my God. Eventually, the blocks included not just features, but a full range of short subject cartoons and newsreels. They're just like, let's push everything through this channel. This mature form of block booking, called full-line forcing, gave the studios a pre-sold market for all of their pictures and kept their various production departments working at capacity. Since the films were usually blocked before they were produced, theaters had to make their booking decisions with the barest of information provided by the distributor. Kind of like when you're buying non-returnable comics from comic book publishers through direct market distribution. This practice, known as blind bidding, forced exhibitors to purchase films sometimes knowing little more than the title of the movie, the cast, and perhaps a brief story tagline. Most film blocks contain about 20 or more features. That's a lot of movies. These were not multiplexes, you know. This is back in the day. But some theaters complained that in the most extreme cases, one block had predetermined the playbill for an entire year with movies they were forced to buy left unshown. So they just have to buy them, and they couldn't even rent or sell them, like unsold comics. The practice was devastating to the small theater owner who had to compete with the studio-owned theater chains that were exempt from block booking. So the studio chains didn't force all their mediocre movies on their own chain outlets. So they had their own chains, and their chains could just put whatever they thought were good movies to put out and make money. And the independent retailers and independent theater owners were forced to resell whatever it was that they were forced to buy, some of it which they couldn't even put out on the shelves to try to sell. Gentlemen's agreements between studios meant that the first-run theaters could pick the best films from each other without being forced to buy the accompanying range, of B pictures. So even studios were able to kind of make deals with each other and not get stuck with bad movies, just the independents. Block booking was also particularly frustrating to the independent producers who distinguished their films by quality rather than volume, only to watch in disgust as their highly individual A pictures became the selling feature of a block studio programmer pictures. Independents complained their films were being fettered by the pre-packaged studio deadweight, but in an industry dominated by vertically integrated companies, the producers were in hopelessly disadvantageous bargaining positions. So what could they do? What could an independent producer do if they're trying to get distributed by a vertically integrated company? A vertically integrated company, almost by definition, doesn't need outsiders, right? Because they're set up to go from creation to delivery to the consumer. The block booking controversy. As with any controversy, block booking was a two-sided issue. The Hollywood studios affirmed that the block booking was comparable to the concept of wholesaling and bulk buying what was a staple of American free enterprise. To Adolf Zucker, a survivor of the haphazard film buying system of the old patents company, block booking represented movie distribution in its most efficient and evolved state. Always a critic of industry monopoly, called block booking, W.W. Hodgson called block booking a corrupted form of the distribution system he pioneered. The major distributors asserted that block booking actually resulted in better films because the guaranteed cash flow allowed the studios to take more risks on individual movies. That would be nice if they did that, but obviously they didn't. That did not have to survive on their own legs. They didn't have to survive on their own legs because they were forcing retailers to fund them. And literally forcing them. It's not like retailers, or these movie theaters that were independents had any choice. If they wanted to show the popular movies by the popular movie stars of the time, they were forced to buy these supposedly risky movies. Of course, the opponents of block booking claim the opposite, that block booking impeded the overall film quality and that it gave no incentive to improve each film while they were being marketed sight unseen. Curiously, both sides pointed to the resulting films to support their arguments. The studio praised the worldwide popularity of Hollywood films in general, while the independents noted the overall scarcity of truly remarkable films. Many civic and public interest groups who became aware of block booking opposed it for censorship reasons. The public advocates voiced concerns that under block booking, nothing prevented the self-regulated movie industry from forcing upon the neighborhood theaters, and therefore middle America, various films of questionable moral value. They likened it to a potentially poisonous food or drug that was being sold without a label. These groups threatened Hollywood with one of its primal fears, outside censorship. Therefore, the battle for block booking had moral and artistic implications as well as the obvious economic issues. While the mass production studio system was in full swing, block booking was arguably the focal point of Hollywood studio power base. I mean, there's a lot of power in that structure, one which the major distributors protected at all costs and eventually fought to a bitter end. The studios lost, but now it was freed up by this decision. So now studios can really do whatever they want with distributing their movies again, which they have not been able to do since 1948. But obviously the market has really changed. But I wanted to also show you, like, there are current complaints about, when you get into production and you get into distribution, and when the distributor is also producing their own content, there's always going to be arguments. So AMC Networks, not AMC Theaters, they split off. AMC Networks is a separate business from AMC Theaters now. AMC Networks files FCC complaint versus AT&T for abusing market clout favoring own networks. So AMC, this is funny because it works on so many levels, but it's not done yet. So AMC Networks files a complaint with the FCC accusing AT&T of penalizing the Walking Dead broadcaster in favor of its own competing channels like HBO and TNT, insisting on discriminatory terms to renew its affiliation agreement. AT&T called AMC Networks' complaint without merit. Okay. In a statement, it said, "We treat all programmers fairly. We will continue to work with AMC Networks to provide its content at a price that's reasonable to our customers. The cost to provide AMC Networks programming to our customers should reflect that AMC Network shows have been declining in popularity as compared to their peers for several years." So what are they talking about? Well, The Walking Dead is not what it used to be. Breaking Bad ain't there no more. So they're going to renegotiate distribution with a content producer as soon as they can. Why? Because they have their own content to push. So they're going to say to AMC, maybe we don't want to offer you the same amount of money because you don't have the same amount of pull with our consumers. What do the consumers care about? Now, on the other side of things, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos recently told Congress he's not up on conversations with HBO Max talks, but using leverage as normal business. What's this about? So this guy, Warner Media's Jason Kilar, has a division called HBO Max. It's HBO's streaming service, owned by Warner Media. Warner Media recently launched May 27th. They got 4 million subscribers, and that was great, but they were not able to get onto Amazon's Prime service or Roku. They wish they could get on Amazon Prime service. Would have been nice, but they can't because Amazon basically is like, nah, we're not going to give you good terms. Why not? Because Amazon's got its own content network called Amazon Prime that they do their own streaming. So why do they need to help AT&T's HBO Max, which is saying basically the same thing to AMC, which used to be owned by AMC Theaters that no longer is. So it kind of all goes around in a bit of a crazy circle. But it's fascinating that block booking, the control of content creation tied to distribution pushed off on independents due to vertical integration, where you own the means of production, the content, and you own the distribution channel, and you own the access directly to the consumer, is really what is constantly fought over, even when it goes back to 1910 and 1915, and creators, content creators, and actors and talent have been fighting against studio systems for distribution and control of studio distribution for more than decades. I mean, this goes back 100+ years, so it's never anything new. But direct to consumer is really always what it's about. For AMC, they want distribution. HBO Max wants distribution as much as they can get through Amazon Prime and also through Roku and through their own HBO Max distribution. Recently, Warner Media decided they want to focus on, instead of wholesale distribution, which would be resale through other channels or reselling their movies through rentals, through other platforms and through movie theaters, they want to focus on direct-to-consumer. Not that they won't distribute through other channels, they will, but they want their focus to be on direct-to-consumer. Look, why would everybody, all the way back to 1910 or whatever, why wouldn't they want to be focused on direct-to-consumer? If technology allows you to go direct-to-consumer, of course you want to go direct-to-consumer, and consider those other wholesale outlets as well. Whether it be stores or other retailers, wholesale is fine. But if you're not direct-to-consumer in an age of technology like we have now, that's really direct-to-consumer, you don't need the old studio system to do it. It doesn't make any sense. So go ahead, tell me what you think in the comments below. I really found this all fascinating, that you can go back, 100 years and it's still the same. Are we going to sell to retailers? Are we going to go direct-to-consumer? What does talent think about going direct-to-consumer? What does talent think about concepts like forcing retailers to take product that they don't necessarily want in exchange for the product that they do want, and the struggle with the retailers and the competition with the retailers, and also the competition for distribution? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. And again, if you want to support my work, it's collegeofthedead.com. Check that out. And also check out The Mermaids and sign up to find out on epicmermaids.com when The Mermaids is going to get launched. It's going to be coming soon. I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.